I bet you've all heard the phrase, you can't judge a book by its cover. But have you ever seen the cover of a book and thought, wow, that book looks interesting. I really want to read it. That recently happened for me when I found out about a book called How to Do Nothing. Yeah, the cover visually looks nice and all. It's a colorful, shrubby bush with bright red and pink flowers. But the reason I was so drawn to it was because of its title, How to Do Nothing. This seemed like a book that would be a good read on vacation, and Alyssa and I just got back from vacation, so I read it while we were gone. And the author of the book teaches at Stanford University. She's an art instructor, and while reflecting on her experiences at Stanford, she talks about something she calls Stanford Duck Syndrome. This book came out in 2019 before COVID hit, but I feel like since COVID has come, Stanford Duck Syndrome is even more widespread than before. Whether you've heard of this or not before, I bet the person sitting next to you has it. And also, I bet you have it too. Here, let me explain. Just picture a duck, maybe a beautiful green-headed mallard duck, or if you're not a duck person, a giant regal white swan. And picture them just floating gently above the water. But then picture them beneath the water, with their legs furiously churning, trying to stay afloat. Do you ever feel like you're living like that? Or that everyone else seems to have it together, where all we can see is above the surface or what they post on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok? And all the while, you're just furiously trying to stay afloat beneath the surface. Have you felt like this lately? For many of us, COVID and the new safety procedures and the changes to parts of life that we just took for granted and all the uncertainty in our world right now has caused a lot to be stirred up. It's causing a lot of churn within us. Whether you feel it or whether you're showing it, or you're telling anybody or not, you're probably feeling it lately. Anxiety and stress and uncertainty feel really widespread right now. We're in a challenging season right now. And amidst all that's swirling right now, we're also starting a new preaching series that I hope will be really timely. It's called Out of Crisis, God Creates. I hope the next few weeks will be of encouragement to you as Greg and I point to a recurring theme throughout the Bible that God's creative and healing work often comes most tangibly and most powerfully in moments of crisis. Simply put, even if you feel overwhelmed and are struggling to keep your head above water right now, these are the moments that God often draws close to us. But before we get there, I have to tell you first about a couple of things that people often think are in the Bible, but actually aren't. Like, for instance, when Chicago Bears legendary coach Mike Ditka got fired, he said, "Scripture teaches us that this too shall pass." But sorry, Coach Ditka, that actually doesn't appear in the Bible. Nowhere in the Bible does it say, "This too shall pass." And I gotta say, I brought this up because we're in Wisconsin, and when we have a chance, we gotta take digs at Bears legends when we have the chance, right? But here's a couple other fun facts, some other examples that you may have heard or thought about before. First, did you know that nowhere in the creation story and in Adam and Eve and in the Garden of Eden is an apple mentioned? Adam and Eve eat of a fruit, but they never specify what kind of fruit this is. And here's another fun fact that you may have not realized. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that 3 wise men came to visit Jesus. Yes, I know there's the great Christmas carol, "We 3 Kings of Orient are." But the Bible only talks of 3 wise men, 3 magi, as they're called. Sorry, I got that wrong. See, I'm even tricked by this. The Bible never says that 3 wise men, or 3 magi, as they're called, come. The Bible just says that wise men, magi, came bringing 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And we assume that if you're going to a birthday party, you got to bring a gift. So 3 gifts had to mean 3 wise men. Maybe, possible, but the Bible never says that. It just says wise men came with 3 gifts. Now, I have a more serious example now to lift up of something that we assume is in the Bible often, but actually isn't. There's this assumption that God created the heavens and the earth and all of creation out of nothing. But nowhere in the Bible does it actually say this. Let me show you. This is how the Bible starts. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. I like how the Common English Bible translates this. They say, "The earth was without shape or form. It was dark over the deep sea, and God's wind swept over the waters." Pastor Greg routinely also speaks from a translation called The Message that he likes, and The Message speaks of a soup of nothingness at the beginning of creation. At the start of Genesis, the world was more like liquid mercury or a black hole or a storm deep at sea in the black of night. And then God began creation. God began to coax peace and order out of chaos. Genesis continues. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness God called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God saw how good it was. And on the second day, God separated earth from sky. And God saw how good it was. And on the third day, God separated land from sea and saw how good it was. And on the fourth day, God separated sun from moon, day from the next day, summer from winter, springtime from autumn. And God saw how good it was. Don't you see? Creation is the story of God forming and shaping and ordering creation. And out of this chaotic, shapeless soup that existed before creation, God began to form and shape and order creation. And see how good it is. I have this electronics box in my entryway closet that I stick all of my extra cables and cords into. And so if I have one charger cable I want to pull out of this box, inevitably this big nest of cables, all of the cables in the box come out with it. Do you know what I'm talking about? And you know it's going to take like 15 minutes at least just to get that one cable I want out. In the story of Genesis, God sits down and begins gently disentangling us from the knots and from the tangled messes in which we find ourselves. Yes, we live in a season of polarization and pandemic and distrust and fake news and racial injustice and economic insecurity and protests. Yeah, we live in a soup of chaos and crisis right now. But we also worship a God who brings peace and calm and good from chaos and from crisis. As I mentioned earlier, I just got back from vacation, and while on vacation, I went camping, and I hoped this time in the woods would serve as like a spiritual retreat of sorts for me. So in addition to reading this book, How to Do Nothing, I also read a book on Benedictine spirituality. It's called The Way of St. Benedict. I was anticipating this book being a reflection on how to grow closer to God, but to my surprise, each chapter after chapter was about getting along with other people. As I kept on reading, I kept on thinking, when is the author going to get to the point? When is the author going to talk about spirituality? But by the end, I started to get it. I started to get that the talk about community had been the point all along. Growing in faith happens in community. Shane Claiborne once said that the church is like Noah's Ark. It stinks. But if you get out of it, you'll drown. If we're hoping to deepen our relationship with God, that also requires us to be in relationship with others around us. Both the people that are easy to love, the people we're committed to loving like friends and family, but also if we want to deepen our relationship with God, this does not happen apart from staying in community with those that challenge us and stretch us. People who challenge us, who stretch us, who just frustrate us, and are more than just obstacles on our spiritual journey. Even people who we just want to write off and stop listening to are opportunities for spiritual growth. It's so tempting to write off and cut out people who think differently than us, who vote differently than us, who feel differently about the protests sweeping our nation about racial justice. But God can still be found in such people. The path to being in right relationship with God includes a call and a path to be in right relationship with others around us too. With that said, this is more than just being nice and tolerating those around us. Our faith journey is always paved in community, both with people who are easy to be with and people who stretch us and drive us like crazy. On our faith journey, God constantly opens doors for us to encounter new sorts of graced collisions with those who stretch us and who see differently than us. Indeed, these graced collisions are often places where we see and encounter God. So returning to the creation story at the beginning of Genesis once again, God orders and arranges creation through separating day from night, land from sky, earth from water. But some of the most beautiful places on earth are where night meets day and land meets sea and earth meets sky. God's shaping of the cosmos did not do away entirely with graced points of encounter here on earth. God's creation is filled with all sorts of graced collisions, like day and night colliding at sunset and sunrise, and land and sea encountering each other on beaches and shoreline, and land meeting sky on the horizon. But God has found a way to make these graced collisions beautiful things. Even the craggy mountain peaks that break an otherwise smooth horizon or sharp rocks that make the ocean churn are beautiful through the creation of God. And right now, life may feel chaotic and filled with crisis, and encounters with others around us may feel hard, and our world may feel churny, and our stomachs may feel churny. But God is opening doors to and providing graced collisions that spark joy, that spark wonder, that spark encounters with the divine. These sparks of joy, of wonder, of the divine, these sparks are the foundation that God is laying right now in this season. From this foundation, God will cause peace to arise, justice and equality to arise, health and safety to arise. Yeah, this season may feel stressful. Yeah, it may feel chaotic. Yeah, it may feel like crisis. But friends, since the very beginning of time, out of crisis, God is creating good. And God is shaping a new world where a new life will spring forth. New life is coming, friends. New life is springing forth. Even in times like this, God is redeeming and shaping all things. Amen.